Take one step closer and prove you belong here. The rich neighbor's son tightened his black belt in the center of the Bellevue courtyard, while cool rain darkened the stone beneath his bare feet. Nathan Cole stood near the edge of the demonstration mat in plain work clothes, his inspection gloves folded in one hand. He was 41, 6'2", lean and powerfully built, but nothing about his quiet posture invited a challenge. "I am not participating," Nathan said. "Then stop telling everyone the setup is unsafe." The young man raised his chin toward the residents gathered beyond the marked line. "You are a home inspector, not a martial artist." Rebecca Lang stepped between the mat and the exit path, event checklist held against her coat. At 39, she carried herself with the controlled precision of an attorney who understood how quickly a neighborhood disagreement could become a liability claim. The exhibition had conditional approval. The wealthy family had paid for the equipment, and cancellation would make her look biased before the review even began. "The rules are clear," she said. "No contact outside the marked zone, no unscheduled sparring, and no one is required to participate." Nathan looked at the exit lane behind her. The mat corner sat too close to the only clear path out of the courtyard. A padded training marker narrowed it further. He had filed an objection that morning, but had not explained enough. He had written insufficient exit clearance and assumed the words would carry the danger he saw. They had not. That was the first question. Why had Rebecca approved a layout that placed normal movement against the exit line? The second was harder. Why did Nathan keep warning people in conclusions instead of giving them the observations they needed before pressure turned into conflict? "You heard her," Nathan said. "No unscheduled sparring." The challenger smiled and stepped off the center mark. "I heard fear." Emma Cole stood beneath the covered walkway, 11 years old, backpack against her chest, watching her father with the expression she used when adults made her embarrassed in public. She had expected an ordinary evening, dinner at 6, homework at 7, no stories about the part of Nathan's life he rarely discussed. "Dad, can we just go?" she asked. Nathan should have answered immediately. Instead, he watched the challenger's feet. The black belt son shifted forward, intending a fast demonstration strike that would stop short of contact. His rear foot landed near the wet mat edge. His balance changed. The strike did not stop where he expected. Nathan moved once. He caught the attacking wrist, turned his own body away from the exit lane, and redirected the momentum into a controlled kneel without twisting the joint or forcing the young man to the ground. The motion lasted less than 2 seconds. No punch landed. No one fell. Nathan released him immediately and stepped back. The courtyard went silent. Rebecca saw what Nathan had seen. Ordinary movement had crossed the marked boundary and carried both men toward the blocked exit. "Stop the demonstration," she said. Her voice cut through the silence. "Everyone off the mat." The challenger rose, more shocked than hurt. "Where did you learn that?" Nathan looked toward Emma before answering. She had gone still, fear replacing embarrassment. "The Navy," he said. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "That was not basic training." Nathan nodded once. "Former Navy SEAL. That does not make this layout safe, and it does not make me part of the show." The title promise became visible without triumph. His past had given him the control to prevent injury, but it had not excused the silence that allowed the challenge to grow. Rebecca ordered the courtyard closed and placed the event under formal review. The decision protected residents, threatened her credibility as safety chair, and disrupted the approval schedule she had promised to complete. Emma walked toward Nathan, but stopped outside arm's reach. "You said this was only an inspection." "It was supposed to be. You always say that after something changes." Nathan looked at his gloves, still folded and unused in his hand. He had prevented one unsafe strike, but his refusal to explain early had made his intervention appear personal, escalated Emma's fear, and forced Rebecca to defend a decision she no longer trusted. Rain tapped against the black belt knot as the young man loosened it with unsteady fingers. Rebecca lifted the event checklist. "Tomorrow morning, I want every safety concern in full. Not conclusions. Measurements, movement paths, and what you believe will happen." Nathan met her gaze. "You may not like what they show. I do not need to like them. I need to be able to verify them." The mat stood empty between them, the exit line still too narrow, and Nathan understood that stopping the challenge had been the easy part. Proving whether the danger came from the challenger, the rules, or his own silence would cost more than anyone in the courtyard yet knew. You told me we were leaving. Emma stood inside the townhouse entryway with her wet backpack still on one shoulder while Nathan locked the door behind them. His inspection gloves remained folded in his hand, darkened by rain but untouched during the confrontation. The demonstration was stopped, he said. That is not what I asked. She walked into the kitchen and checked the schedule board beside the refrigerator. Dinner at 6. Homework at 7. A science project due Friday. Nathan erased grocery shopping and wrote safety report, 8 in the morning. Emma watched him change the next day before he asked what it would change for her. You did it again. The report has to be finished before the review. So I have to go early? I will arrange your morning. With what person? Nathan paused. He had not arranged anything. I will handle it. Emma dropped her backpack beside the table. That means you do not know. Nathan filled a pot with water and reached for pasta. He wanted to explain that the courtyard layout could have pushed someone into the exit path, that the young man's wet footing had changed a controlled strike into something less predictable, and that stopping it had required less force than letting it continue. Instead, he protected Emma with another reduced version. No one was in real danger after I stepped in. Emma looked at him. Were they in danger before? The setup was wrong. Did you know that before today? Yes. Did you tell Rebecca everything? I filed an objection. That was not my question. Nathan turned toward the stove. His silence answered more clearly than words. Emma placed both hands on the table. I do not want to go to another demonstration where someone tries to make you prove something. You will not. Not even if you think it is safe. Not even then. And I do not want people asking me about the Navy. Nathan set the spoon down. That is your boundary. Say it like you understand. You will not attend any demonstration involving me, and you will not answer questions about my service unless you choose to. Emma nodded once, but her expression remained guarded. She had received the boundary she needed and still did not trust that Nathan would keep it when pressure returned. Across the neighborhood, Rebecca sat alone in her office with the wet event checklist, Nathan's short written objection, and the approval conditions spread across her desk. Her objective was larger than deciding whether one challenge had crossed a line. She had to determine whether the neighborhood exhibition could continue legally, fairly, and without creating a hazard that the association had already been warned about. The wealthy family expected the event to resume. Canceling it without repeatable findings could make her appear hostile or politically selective. Allowing it to continue after what she had seen could expose residents to a danger she had treated as equal to mere preference. Nathan's complaint read insufficient exit clearance, movement conflict likely. No measurements. No diagram. No explanation of how ordinary footwork could cross the exit line. His conclusion had been correct enough to stop the strike and incomplete enough to leave her defending a layout she might never have approved with better information. Rebecca called him at 7:15. Emma sat at the kitchen table with her science notebook open, but listened when the phone rang. Tomorrow begins in my office, Rebecca said. No courtyard. No demonstration. No challenger. Nathan glanced toward Emma before answering. Good. Rebecca noticed the speed of the reply. Was your daughter near the mat because you expected a routine inspection? Yes. Did you tell her the complaint could become confrontational? No. Then the communication problem did not begin with me. Nathan accepted the sentence without argument. What do you need? Measurements of the mat, the exit line, the marker position, and the movement path you observed. Separate what you saw from what you believe it means. You are treating the challenge and the layout as equal causes. I am treating every claim as unverified until I can test it. Unequal risks do not become equal because the paperwork is neutral. Rebecca looked at the approval form she had signed. His criticism struck the exact weakness in her process. She had treated the wealthy family's request for a dramatic exhibition and Nathan's safety concern as competing preferences instead of asking which claim described measurable risk. I am suspending the entire event, not only the sparring segment, she said. The decision protected residents and immediately placed her professional credibility, neighborhood trust, and approval process under scrutiny. Tomorrow, we begin again. Nathan looked at Emma's schedule board. I will be there at 8. Will that disrupt your daughter's morning? He hesitated, then gave the answer he should have given first. Yes. I need to ask her before I confirm. Rebecca waited. Nathan covered the phone and turned to Emma. The meeting is at 8. I can ask for a later time, or I can change your drop-off after we agree on it. Emma studied him, surprised by the question. Ask for 9. Nathan returned to the call. 9 works better for my family. Rebecca checked her calendar. Then 9. The exchange was practical, but both noticed what had changed. She had made room for a boundary instead of treating speed as fairness. He had stated a need before forcing a solution. By the end of the night, one loop had closed. The layout, not Nathan's pride alone, had pushed normal movement toward the exit path. The harder loop remained open. Rebecca still did not know whether the format was inherently unsafe, and Nathan still had to prove that his silence had not become another hazard inside his own home. Begin with the exit line, not the challenge. Rebecca stood inside the community training room at 9 the next morning, event checklist clipped beneath one hand, while Nathan measured the distance from the mat corner to the only clear doorway. Cool rain tapped against the high windows, and wet pavement outside reflected the pale autumn light into the room. Nathan wore a plain work shirt, dark trousers, and his inspection gloves tucked beneath one arm. 32 inches at the narrowest point, he said. Rebecca checked the approved layout. The event plan lists 48. The padded marker takes 16. The marker is removable. Not during the demonstration sequence you approved. Their goals met at the same line and moved in opposite directions. Nathan wanted the exhibition stopped until the room proved safe under actual movement. Rebecca needed a defensible finding that separated measurable hazard from the pressure created by one public confrontation. She placed a strip of removable tape along the approved boundary. Show me what crossed this line yesterday. I can show you the path. I cannot recreate the exact strike without another participant. Then do not recreate it. Map ordinary movement. Nathan set 2 padded floor markers at the starting positions used during the demonstration. He walked the challenger's first step, pivot, and recovery without throwing a strike. Rebecca timed the sequence and marked where his lead foot landed. On the first pass, he stopped 6 inches inside the boundary. On the second, his heel touched the tape. On the third, when his shoe carried moisture from the doorway, his recovery step moved slightly wider and crossed it. The clue became clearer but not complete. Normal movement could approach or cross the exit line, yet the result changed with pace, footing, and body angle. That is inconsistent, Rebecca said. It is sensitive, Nathan replied. Those are not the same thing. For policy, they are until we can repeat the condition. Her neutrality-first instinct made her treat every variation as a reason to delay judgment. Nathan heard delay and began compressing his explanation again. If someone is standing in that exit, they get hit. That is a conclusion. It is what the geometry does. Then give me the geometry. He exhaled through his nose, frustrated by a process that demanded words after his body had already understood the danger. Rebecca noticed and waited instead of filling the silence. Nathan repositioned the padded marker, traced the likely recovery arc with tape, and showed how the mat corner forced movement toward the doorway when the participant avoided stepping off the surface. His practical knowledge turned a vague warning into a visible path. Rebecca's legal discipline turned the path into questions another person could test. The exit is being used as empty safety space, she said. But the event plan also treats it as an active circulation lane. Nathan nodded. That is the conflict. The room remained quiet except for rain and the faint pull of tape from the floor. Rebecca crouched to compare the checklist with the measured spacing. One strand of auburn hair had come loose near her cheek. Nathan moved the clipboard out of the damp area before it touched the wet floor, then stepped back without comment. She noticed the gesture, dried the board with her sleeve, and handed him the next marker instead of thanking him. Their connection advanced through useful attention, not softness. I can authorize one expanded timing test, Rebecca said. Normal stance, defensive movement, and recovery. No strikes, no audience, no deviations. You need different movement speeds. One variable at a time. That protects the test and may hide the risk. It protects the result from becoming whatever either of us expects. Her decision helped the investigation by expanding the approved test and created a cost by using the final room access window available before the neighborhood review deadline. If the results remained mixed, she would have suspended the event without enough proof to defend the decision. Nathan looked toward the exit line. Then include wet shoe entry as a separate condition. Rebecca considered it. Document why. He wrote moisture changes recovery with. not unsafe because wet. The distinction mattered. She approved the condition. By noon, the expanded test was scheduled for the following day. Rebecca had risked her credibility and compressed the timeline to examine Nathan's concern. Nathan had finally translated instinct into a testable path, but his habit of giving conclusions first still made every useful fact harder to reach. As they left the training room, both understood the same new information. The danger might not come from aggression at all. It might be built into a layout that required ordinary defensive movement and public circulation to occupy the same narrow space. Emma will not be used to prove whether this room is safe. Nathan stood beside the training room doorway the following afternoon while Rebecca reviewed the expanded timing sequence on her clipboard. Emma was not inside. She was at home completing her science project under the routine they had agreed on, and Nathan had called before the meeting to confirm when he would return. His boundary was clear, but the way he delivered it made Rebecca look as though she had proposed involving his daughter. "I did not ask her to participate," Rebecca said. The neighborhood review requested a youth movement example because families use this room. Then use the approved adult sequence. The request is about scale and reaction time. She is 11, not a measurement. Rebecca closed the checklist. "I agree. I rejected the request this morning." Nathan's shoulders lowered slightly. He had protected the right boundary by assuming the threat before asking what Rebecca had already done. His distrust saved him from complacency, but it also made cooperation begin with accusation. Outside the room, the neighborhood pressure had changed form. The wealthy family wanted the exhibition restored under the original approval. Other residents wanted the training room closed until every risk disappeared. Rebecca's objective was not to satisfy either side. She had to determine whether a legally compliant event could operate without blocking the exit or turning normal movement into contact risk. Canceling without repeatable findings would undermine the association's review process. Continuing without them could make yesterday's near collision predictable rather than accidental. "We have 90 minutes, she said. After that, the room returns to regular use. Nathan looked at the wet footprints near the entrance. "Then we test dry movement first and moisture second. That is the approved order. The marker position has to remain fixed." Also approved. 2 padded markers define the starting distance. A third stood near the exit line, representing the equipment that had narrowed the passage during the courtyard demonstration. Nathan walked the normal stance, defensive turn, and recovery sequence while Rebecca timed each phase. The first dry pass stopped inside the boundary. The second came within 4 inches. The third touched the line when Nathan increased recovery speed to the maximum permitted by the event rules. Rebecca marked the result, but did not call it confirmation. "1 crossing in 3 passes, she said. "At the upper timing limit." "The upper limit is still approved." "Yes, but the result has not repeated." They moved to the moisture condition. Nathan stepped once across a damp entry mat, then began from the same marker. His recovery widened. His heel crossed the exit line on the first pass and stopped short on the second. The third pass crossed by less than an inch. The clue continued to strengthen, but variation remained. Ordinary movement approached the exit often and crossed it under some approved conditions. They still did not know whether the format made crossing unavoidable. Rebecca faced a difficult choice. She could end the test with mixed findings and leave the event suspended without stronger support, or authorize 1 additional timing series that would consume the final access window before the review meeting. 1 expanded series, she decided. Same spacing, same movement, 5 repetitions at each approved speed. No strikes and no changes to marker position. The decision helped create a cleaner comparison and cost her the last chance to restore the room before the neighborhood deadline. The association would now enter review with the event still paused and her original approval under direct criticism. Nathan nodded, then noticed that the padded marker near the exit sat slightly off the tape from repeated contact. It moved. Rebecca checked the floor mark. Less than an inch. Then reset it before every pass. "We will verify it before every series." Every pass. That creates a new interruption variable. Nathan heard procedure resisting an obvious safeguard. When Rebecca turned to record the moisture condition, he nudged the marker back to what he believed was the exact approved position. The correction protected the boundary he thought the test required, but he did not measure or report the adjustment. The next sequence produced a wider crossing than any approved pass before it. Nathan saw the pattern he expected. Rebecca saw only a result that appeared stronger without knowing the setup had changed. That one matters, he said. It matters if the marker stayed fixed. Nathan looked at the tape, then at her clipboard. He should have disclosed the movement immediately. Instead, he told himself he had restored the intended position rather than altered it. Before they left, he entered the crossing distance in the shared worksheet beside the approved series and failed to note that the setup had been changed. Rebecca authorized the full 5-pass series and extended the event suspension through formal review. Her action protected residents and damaged her standing with both sides of the neighborhood dispute. Nathan's unreported correction made the risk look clearer, but it also placed the next stage of proof on a foundation only he knew had shifted. The marker moved between approved passes. Rebecca placed the event worksheet on her office table the next morning and turned it toward Nathan. The strongest boundary crossing appeared in the final row, but the setup verification beside it was blank. Nathan stood opposite her in a plain work shirt, his inspection gloves folded beneath one hand. It had shifted from repeated contact, he said. That is not what I asked. Cool rain traced the office window, and the paused event checklist lay between them beside the measured room diagram. Did you reposition it? Rebecca asked. Nathan looked at the crossing distance instead of her. I returned it to the approved line. Did you measure the position before you moved it? No. Did you record the adjustment? No. Then you did not restore a verified position. You created a new one. Nathan's jaw tightened. The marker was wrong. You believed it was wrong. The next pass confirmed the danger. The next pass confirmed movement under a setup only you understood. Until that moment, the padded marker had meant one thing to both of them. Equipment narrowing the exit path and making ordinary defensive movement more likely to cross the safety line. Now it carried a second meaning. It also marked the point where Nathan's private certainty entered the test without disclosure. The risk in the room might still be real, but his method had made the strongest result impossible to defend. Rebecca opened the shared comparison worksheet. You entered the crossing distance beside the approved series. It happened during the approved movement sequence. After an unapproved setup change, I moved it less than an inch. An inch is the difference this review is trying to measure. Nathan glanced at his gloves. He had worn them through years of inspections because they reminded him to touch only what his role required. Yesterday, he had moved the marker with his bare hand because the adjustment felt too obvious to justify stopping the test. The object he believed he was correcting now exposed the flaw he kept naming as caution. His silence had not prevented conflict. It had placed his judgment above the process and left Rebecca defending information she did not fully possess. I should have stopped the series, he said. I should have told you the marker shifted and let you decide whether to reset it. Rebecca did not reward the admission with comfort. Why did you not? Because I thought you would spend the remaining time debating whether the movement mattered. And you decided the answer before the test was finished. Yes. The word changed their relationship more than another argument could have. Rebecca sat down and looked at the approval she had signed on the first day. I made my own version of that mistake, she said. I treated the original event request and your safety objection as equal positions because neutrality felt defensible. I approved the layout before asking whether the risks were actually comparable. Then I restricted the first tests because I wanted findings that would fit the review schedule. Nathan met her eyes. Your process missed the danger. And your private correction may have damaged the proof needed to show it. She could remove the final row, preserve the earlier mixed results, and continue toward the neighborhood review without disclosing the breach. The event would remain suspended, but her original approval might survive with limited criticism. Or she could withdraw the full comparison, reveal that the working analysis contained an unverified setup change, and order the room tested again under independent controls. That choice would cost 2 days, deepen public distrust, and place her judgment under formal review. Rebecca opened the official review entry. I am withdrawing the analysis. Nathan stepped forward. The earlier passes were clean. The observations may still be useful. The combined comparison is not. You can separate the final result. I can remove a row. I cannot erase that I relied on a series whose setup was not controlled. She entered the disclosure under her own name, identified Nathan's unreported adjustment, and attached her original approval decision for review. Once submitted, the event could not resume until repeat testing was complete. You will not position markers, enter results, or direct the sequence, she said. You may identify movement conditions and explain what you observe. You are removing me from the work. I am changing your role because you changed the test. Nathan placed his gloves beside the checklist. Then keep those out of it too. Rebecca looked at them. They are personal property. They are a reminder that I knew where my hands belonged and moved the marker anyway. She left the gloves on the table but did not make them evidence. The midpoint had not revealed a larger secret. It had changed the meaning of what they already knew. The unsafe layout remained possible, the boundary crossings remained concerning, and Nathan's skill remained valuable. Yet his quiet restraint could no longer be mistaken for harmless humility. When he withheld uncertainty and acted alone, he became part of the escalation. Rebecca's neutrality could no longer be mistaken for fairness either. By treating unequal risks as equal claims, she had helped create the pressure surrounding every later choice. Their first strategy ended with one irreversible decision. The existing analysis was gone, the event remained suspended, and clean repeat testing would begin without either of them controlling the answer. Nathan left the office without his gloves or influence. Rebecca remained beside an empty comparison sheet, knowing she had protected the truth by making it slower, more difficult, and far harder to reach. You may describe the movement, but you may not touch the markers. Rebecca stood inside the community training room on the morning of day 6, while the independently reset layout waited beneath pale window light. Nathan remained outside the taped test lane without his inspection gloves, clipboard, or authority to alter the sequence. His role had narrowed to observation. He could identify where ordinary defensive movement changed direction, where recovery widened, and how the fixed room dimensions affected the exit path. He could not position equipment, enter results, or decide which pass mattered. The cost of using his skill was watching the process continue under limits he had earned. Rebecca checked the measured spacing against the original room diagram, then began the first approved series. Dry footwear, normal stance, standard defensive turn, controlled recovery. The black belt son from the courtyard performed the movement under the no-contact rules he had already accepted. The first pass stopped inside the exit line. The second came within 3 inches. The third crossed by less than 1. Rebecca reset nothing between passes because each marker position had already been measured and locked. The result was recorded twice. Nathan watched the path instead of the number. The recovery widens when he avoids stepping off the mat, he said. Rebecca wrote the observation separately from the result. That explains the direction, not whether the crossing repeats. The second series used the approved upper movement speed. 2 of 5 passes crossed the boundary. The third series added the already approved moisture condition at the entrance. 4 of 5 crossed. The pattern no longer depended on Nathan's private adjustment or the challenger's anger. The existing clue had become clean corroboration. Ordinary movement under allowed conditions repeatedly entered the exit path. It still did not prove that every challenge sequence would become unsafe, only that the approved format created a measurable and recurring risk. Nathan should have felt vindicated. Instead, each repeatable crossing showed how unnecessary his earlier interference had been. Rebecca completed the summary under her own name. When the neighborhood review questioned why the event remained suspended, she did not describe Nathan as the sole cause of delay. I approved a layout before comparing circulation space with movement space, she said. I later limited the test scope to protect the review schedule. The unreported marker change damaged the first analysis, but my earlier decisions created the conditions in which that breach carried greater cost. I am responsible for keeping the event paused until a controlled demonstration resolves the format. The statement protected the integrity of the process and weakened her standing with people who expected a quick answer. Nathan heard every word. She had accepted accountability without returning his influence. That distinction mattered. At home that evening, Emma sat at the kitchen table with her science project spread across 2 sheets of cardboard. Nathan had called before leaving the training room and arrived at the time he gave her. She noticed, but she did not mention it. Did they make you fight again? She asked. No. Did you touch anything you were not supposed to touch? Nathan pulled out the chair across from her, but waited until she nodded before sitting. No, did you want to? He looked at the paper compass beside her ruler. Yes. Emma studied him. That sounds more honest than saying everything was fine. The clean test showed people crossed the exit line during normal movement. They did not show that anyone wanted to hurt someone. So the rich kid was not the whole problem. No. Were you part of the problem? Nathan did not reduce the answer. Yes. I knew the layout looked unsafe, but I explained too little before the challenge. Then I moved a marker without permission because I thought waiting would waste time. That made the proof harder to trust. Emma pressed one corner of the cardboard flat. My rule stays the same. You do not attend any demonstration involving me. And nobody uses me as an example because I am a kid. Agreed. And you tell me before plans change. Agreed. She returned to her project without smiling. One truthful conversation did not erase the memory of him acting first and explaining later. The next morning, Rebecca brought Nathan the controlled demonstration plan. It used the same spacing, the same timing ranges, the same exit line, and no strikes. You may review the movement order, she said. You may not change it. Nathan found one transition where the recovery path could approach the doorway faster than the stop rule anticipated. He marked the concern in the margin instead of adjusting the setup. Rebecca accepted the note and sent it through independent review. Their abilities still moved the work forward, but only under limits that cost them speed, authority, and trust. The final demonstration was approved for the following day. One unauthorized change would cancel it, leave the event unresolved, and turn Nathan's promises to both Rebecca and Emma into proof that his silence still controlled more than he admitted. Do not move that marker. Rebecca's voice cut across the training room just as Nathan reached the padded boundary post beside the exit line. The controlled demonstration was scheduled to begin in 12 minutes. The room dimensions, movement order, and timing intervals had been independently approved, but Nathan had spent the last half hour watching the recovery sequence on paper and imagining the same crossing that had already appeared in clean tests. The stop point comes too late, he said. The participant reaches the doorway before the sequence ends. Your concern is in the review notes. The plan leaves the marker where normal recovery narrows the exit. That is what the demonstration is designed to test. Nathan looked at the black belt tied around the training dummy near the starting position, then at the padded marker defining the clearance. The belt knot sat perfectly centered. The marker did not. To him, it represented a hazard everyone could already see. To the process, it represented a fixed condition that could not change without invalidating comparison. Rebecca turned toward the timing sheet for one moment. Nathan moved the marker 6 inches away from the exit line. Nathan. He stopped with both hands still on the padding. I widened the clearance. Without approval. The movement path is already crossing it. Then the test must show that under the approved setup. The approved setup asks us to wait for the unsafe result. Rebecca stepped between him and the timing line. No participant has begun. No one is in danger. You changed the condition because you decided the answer was too obvious to verify. Nathan looked at the floor tape. The marker had been measured from that line, but he had moved it before the first pass. The demonstration could not begin until the original position was re-established and independently checked. The room access window would be lost. Stop the test, he said. Rebecca did not need to. His unauthorized change had already done it. Nathan removed his hands and stepped back. I did it again. He looked at the marker rather than at her. I saw the same conflict between recovery space and the exit. I decided your process was reacting too slowly. I told myself 6 inches would protect everyone and preserve the purpose of the test. What I actually did was replace the approved condition with my own judgment. Rebecca remained silent. My silence helped the challenge escalate because I gave conclusions instead of reasons. I moved the first marker because I thought explaining would waste time. That damaged the analysis. Today I promised I would report concerns and leave the setup alone. Then I changed it anyway. I have made the event harder to evaluate, cost another testing window, and shown Emma that my rules last only until fear convinces me I know better. His voice stayed calm, but calm no longer protected him from responsibility. Rebecca picked up the event checklist. I approved the original courtyard layout because I treated your safety objection and the family's exhibition request as equally weighted claims. I limited early testing because I wanted findings that fit the review schedule. I then kept final approval authority even after my judgment became part of the dispute. The consequences are a delayed event, damaged community trust, in a process that placed too much control in the hands of the two people most invested in the outcome. Nathan met her eyes. What changes now? I will disclose this interruption with my earlier approval failures. I will suspend my own authority to approve the final demonstration. The setup will be restored and verified through independent review before either of us enters the control lane again. That may end the event before the test happens. It may. Nathan took out his phone and called Emma from the hallway. The demonstration did not happen, he said. I moved something I was not allowed to move, and the test was canceled for today. Emma was quiet. Did anyone get hurt? No. Did you think you were helping? Yes. That is the part one do not trust yet. I understand. She ended the call without forgiving him. Nathan returned and placed his empty hands at his sides. His gloves were still in Rebecca's office where he had left them. Their shared rule became simple and costly. Every safety concern would be recorded before action, and no person who raised the concern could alter the setup used to test it. Nathan surrendered all control over markers, timing, and sequence. Rebecca surrendered final approval. The demonstration would restart only if independent review restored the layout and accepted the plan, leaving one remaining window, less authority for both of them, and no room for another private correction. Begin the controlled sequence. Rebecca stood at the edge of the community training room on the 8th morning with her final approval authority formally suspended and the event checklist limited to observation. The padded boundary marker had been restored to its independently verified position. The mat spacing, exit line, timing intervals, and movement order matched the approved plan exactly. Nathan remained outside the taped control lane without gloves, clipboard, or access to the setup. His role was limited to describing movement when asked. The black belt remained tied around the training dummy at the starting point, no longer a symbol of superiority, only a visual reference for the approved challenge position. The black belt son from the courtyard stood at the marked start under the same no-contact conditions used in the clean tests. Rebecca could not approve the outcome, but she could make the first decisive choice inside the limits that remained to her. Test the format we actually authorized, she said. Do not adjust for what we already suspect. The first phase returned to the clue that had appeared in the courtyard. Ordinary defensive movement could carry a participant toward the exit path. The challenger began at standard speed. A forward step, defensive turn, controlled recovery. The first pass stopped inside the line. The second reached within 2 inches. The third crossed by less than 1. Rebecca recorded each position without interpretation. The crossing is present, she said. Not yet unavoidable. Nathan nodded. The recovery widens when he stays on the mat instead of stepping off. The second phase tested the corroboration already established. The same sequence was repeated at the upper timing limit permitted by the event rules. 2 passes crossed the exit line. Then the approved moisture condition was added at the entrance. 4 of 5 crossed. Each marker remained fixed. Each timing interval remained unchanged. Each result was measured twice and entered separately. The risk was no longer dependent on Nathan's private correction or the challenger's aggression. It appeared under normal, permitted movement. Still, the central question remained unresolved. Did the approved challenge format itself create unavoidable collision risk, or could disciplined participants remain controlled within the space? Rebecca authorized the full challenge sequence exactly as approved, including the starting distance, defensive timing, and required recovery path, even though the result could expose her original approval as unsafe. Nathan saw the exit conflict before the final sequence began. He also saw the marker he had moved the day before and kept both hands at his sides. His decisive action was restraint. The stop rule will not protect the doorway, he said from outside the control line. Record that as an observation, Rebecca replied. Do not change the setup. Understood. The challenger advanced from the black belt position, executed the approved demonstration movement, then recovered according to the written timing. The first run crossed the exit boundary. The second crossed farther when the defensive turn required him to remain fully on the mat. The third crossed again at normal speed, even without wet footing or aggressive force. Rebecca ordered the sequence repeated from the same marks. It produced the same outcome. The conclusive proof came from nothing new. The mat corner and exit path had created the original conflict. The clean spacing and timing tests had shown repeated crossings under ordinary approved conditions. The full challenge sequence now showed that the format itself required movement into the only clear exit lane. The danger did not depend on ego, wealth, anger, or Nathan's military history. It was built into the event design. Rebecca closed the event checklist. The exhibition is canceled. No one in the room was humiliated. The challenger's skill was not mocked, Nathan's service was not glorified, and Rebecca did not protect her reputation by shifting blame. She submitted the complete results, her original approval, Nathan's unauthorized marker changes, and her suspension of final authority for independent policy revision. Nathan was asked whether he wanted a formal operational role in future demonstrations because of his experience. He declined. My observations were useful. My conduct also damaged the review. Any future role should be decided through the same independent process as the policy. Rebecca issued interim spacing and exit clearance rules for all neighborhood demonstrations. Movement areas could no longer overlap circulation lanes. Fixed equipment required verification before every approved series, and no person who designed or altered a setup could grant final approval alone. The rules would remain temporary until independent review determined whether to adopt them permanently. The event stayed canceled, the training room remained closed to demonstrations, and Rebecca's original approval entered formal review. Nathan left without restored authority, admiration, or special status. The central question had a clear answer. The confrontation had become dangerous because an approved format placed normal martial movement inside a public exit path, and the adults responsible for preventing that risk had allowed silence, neutrality, and speed to delay proof. For weeks later, Nathan still checked the townhouse schedule before he picked up his keys, but he no longer treated the times as decisions he could revise alone. On Monday, he told Emma that an inspection review might run past 4, and asked whether she preferred an earlier pickup or a call before the agreed time. On Thursday, he finished early and came home without turning the change into a surprise. Emma still watched the clock. She simply stopped watching it as though every delay meant his past had returned to claim him. His work remained limited while the neighborhood review considered his conduct. He completed evidence handling retraining, submitted written accounts of both unauthorized marker changes, and returned to residential inspections only after independent approval of each assignment. He did not ask Rebecca to restore his influence, and she did not interfere with the process. When he noticed a safety concern, he recorded the measurements, separated observation from conclusion, and waited for verification before touching anything. The waiting still felt inefficient. He practiced it anyway. Rebecca's original approval entered formal review with the same seriousness as Nathan's actions. She no longer signed event plans she had helped design, and every proposed demonstration required independent spacing checks, verified exit clearance, and separate final approval. For weeks after the controlled sequence, the review adopted those controls as permanent neighborhood policy. The training room reopened for ordinary instruction, but challenge exhibitions remained prohibited unless the movement area and circulation lane were fully separated. Rebecca accepted a written finding that her neutrality-first approach had treated measurable danger as though it were merely another opinion. She did not blame the wealthy family, Nathan, or the event schedule for a decision that had been hers. Nathan and Rebecca continued to disagree. He believed any martial arts event near a single exit should be rejected immediately. She agreed the risk deserved a presumption against approval, but insisted that policy could not become a substitute for measuring each room. Some layouts are obviously bad, he said during one review meeting. Obvious to whom? She asked. He started to answer with his own experience. Then he stopped. What evidence would justify an immediate temporary suspension? Rebecca proposed a minimum clearance threshold and independent measurement before any event setup. Nathan argued that the threshold was too narrow. She asked him to document the movement arc that supported a larger distance. He did. The policy changed only after the calculation was repeated. Neither controlled the outcome alone. At home, Emma maintained her own rules. She did not attend demonstrations involving Nathan. No one asked her to represent children in the safety review. Nathan told her when neighborhood meetings could affect dinner or pickup, but he did not bring the dispute into her homework unless she asked. One evening, she looked at the inspection gloves hanging beside the door. Rebecca had returned them after the review confirmed they were personal property. Do you still want to move things when people are too slow? Emma asked. Yes, he said. Do you? No, that answer is annoying. It is also true. Emma returned to her science book. She had not forgiven the earlier broken promises in one dramatic moment. She had simply begun believing the answers that stayed consistent. Rebecca came to the townhouse twice during those weeks, both times after asking. The first visit lasted less than 5 minutes on the porch while she returned Nathan's gloves. Emma opened the door, but did not invite her inside. Rebecca waited until Nathan appeared and handed them over without crossing the threshold. The second visit came on a clear Friday evening after the permanent policy was approved. Nathan had already told Emma that Rebecca might bring the final notice. Only the notice, Emma said. No meeting at the table. Agreed. Rebecca arrived with one envelope and no checklist. She remained on the porch until Emma stepped back from the doorway. Nathan read the decision outside. His inspection role had been fully restored under the independent conditions already imposed, but he received no special authority over neighborhood events. Rebecca's final approval power remained separated from the safety review process. Nothing had been granted as a favor. Every change had passed through rules neither of them could bend. Nathan folded the notice. I made chili, he said. Would you like to stay for dinner? Rebecca looked at Emma before answering. Nathan did not answer for her. Emma considered the question, then pointed toward the kitchen. You can stay if nobody talks about belts, exits, or insurance. That seems reasonable, Rebecca said. During dinner, Nathan and Rebecca disagreed about whether cornbread needed sugar. Emma declared that both versions were acceptable if no one made a speech about tradition. Later, Rebecca noticed a loose black belt tied around the training bag Nathan used for basic fitness drills in the garage. Emma walked over, retied the knot carefully, then looked at both adults. I am not watching a demonstration. There is no demonstration, Nathan said. I know. Rebecca waited near the doorway. Would you like us to leave the garage? She asked. Emma considered it. You can stay. Just do not turn this into a lesson. Nathan set his gloves on the shelf instead of reaching for the bag. Rebecca remained beside him, close enough to share the quiet, but far enough to leave Emma the space she had requested. Under the warm garage light, the black belt no longer marked a challenge. It rested securely around an ordinary training bag while Emma checked the knot once, nodded to herself, and went back inside ahead of them.